Hey, Janice, how's it going? And thank you so much for coming back.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
You're welcome. For the viewers who didn't see part one that we did with you, are you okay to just give them a little recap of your story?
Um, yeah, sure. Okay. I'm not sure what exactly you guys want to know, but obviously John and I were in a relationship. We had met back in 2013, 2012, the December of 2012, and we got married, and we had been together, up until his death. And so the last episode, I was just kind of rehashing everyone, or just letting everyone, informing everyone about what has been happening here since John's death in Spain. I'm here in Spain, so that's what I'm.
Yeah, and I think we rounded out at the tragic moment, over a year ago, when you found out what had happened. Do you just want to take us through that day again, so we can start where we left off?
So yeah, I had spoken to John twice. I had spoken to him in the morning after. Um, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I
That's
had
okay.
spoken to him in the morning after he had come from court, and he was not depressed or anything. He was definitely disappointed with the decision from the court, but it wasn't a surprise to us. We knew that that's what was this that we knew that that was the decision that was going to come down. And so the lawyers, we had five attorneys working on his cases at the time, and they had already come up with a plan um, to kind of combat or I should say, appeal the extradition request. So we spoke about that in the morning, and he had the day before he had said he had mentioned something to me about having a premonition. And so I'm only mentioning this because he brought it up again, in that morning call. Whatever it was, it bothered him very much, but he didn't want to share with me the details of it. So, and even, that morning he didn't want to share it, but he just reiterated again, that he had this premonition and it was bothering him. So, um, we kind of shifted the conversation away from that, and he just wanted to kind of talk about, the lawyers and what they were doing, what their plans were, and um, just how his day was going, everything. So there was nothing strange about the conversation. Let me just sum it up that way. There was nothing strange about either of the two conversations that we had. We spoke in the morning and in the afternoon. And the last thing that he said to me on our last phone call was that I will call you later. And so, this is what I was waiting for. We spoke every day, usually every day, unless there was an issue in the prison. But we spoke every day, three times a day. They were only 8-minute calls, but they were very precious time that we had together. Anyways, so I was waiting on the third call, and I think it was around 4ish p.m. Spain time, where I was just happened to be on Twitter, and I was looking through my DMs, and I got a DM from someone saying, it said, "Oh my God, tell me this isn't true." And so I tried to go through Twitter and see what she was referring to, and I just went ahead and went on Google, and then I saw the news about John. So that's how I found out about the news. That's also how his attorney found out the news. The prison didn't even call his attorney to let him know that John was no longer, with us. And from there, things are kind of hazy for me, because I was just kind of floating through my days, not really present, but as present as much as I could be.
So, for people then out there who are watching this, and it's just absolutely universal support that's coming in for you right now. Everyone's wishing you, condolences and well wishes. And when this happened, then How did the authorities frame it? Did they say he was depressed? Did they say he left a suicide note? Did they try and like
Um,
justify the suicide theory?
they never said anything about depression or anything. Actually, I went to the prison. to collect his belongings. And I spoke to, I guess he was over the prison or over maybe over the guards of the prison. I'm not sure, but he was in an elevated position within the prison, and he spoke very highly of John. He spoke very, he just said he was, a model prisoner, I guess, if you want to call it that. That they never had any problems with him. He was always in a good mood. He was always trying to, keep a smile on his face and keep smiles on everyone else's faces. He didn't get into any altercations with the guards. The guards liked him. The prisoners liked him as well. Um, he said even that day before when before they found him, he was fine. There was no signs of him being down or feeling um defeated, like there was no other option for him after this court's decision. And he was speaking to me specifically about that day. Mind you, he was speaking in Spanish. It had to be translated to me, but um, from what I could understand of what he was saying, he seemed very genuine and not just trying to console me because I was grieving. Um, so I can only go off of that, what they shared with me about that. And then there was a story that came out later on about the suicide note that they found in his pocket, the alleged suicide note. I don't believe it was a suicide note just because John was making tweets and he would write his tweets down and read them to me, and then I would get them tweeted. And that's what would happen. And so to me, it read like a tweet. um, it didn't sound like, obviously, it probably sounded a little more down than his normal tweets. But remember, he was in prison. He wasn't in a Martha Stewart kind of prison. He wasn't in some club fed, really nice kind of white collar prison. He was with hardened criminals. He was in general, what we call in America, general population, which is where you're with everyone. You're not secluded or sequestered away. Like, what's his name? Jeffrey Epstein. I don't believe he was in a general population. I believe he was sequestered in a special area of the prison. That wasn't what John was, his experience. He was with all of the other prisoners. So naturally his mood would be up and down. And so but I don't believe that in any way or shape or form that tweet would have represented how, if that was his decision, if he willingly took his life. I don't think that note that they allege is a suicide note would adequately represent what he would have said in his last words. Not at all. Mind you, we had spoken in the afternoon, so that would have given him, what, 4 or 5, 6 hours to come up with something more significant than that, what that note said. Just knowing John, you know. Um, so I don't believe that it was a suicide note.
Yeah, they're definitely grasping at straws on that note. So, Anexus, one of the viewers, has asked a question for you, Janice. Can Janice speak about what she really thinks may have happened to her husband?
Um, um, not in really any detail that I feel comfortable with sharing. I just don't believe that he killed himself. I just don't believe that, and I will never believe that. Just because of everything that's happened, since then. You know, um, they took months to close their investigation into what happened. Mind you, it was an investigation I didn't request. The prison itself opened the investigation. And if it's a suicide, like you leaked to the press, why are you opening an investigation? And why is it taking you 7 months to complete this investigation? And why am I not able to see him? Even still, why can't I see him? And what I mean see him, I mean fully be able to, have my moment to say goodbye and everything. But because of their investigation is still open, I can't do that. I guess it's just their procedure, but it's a ridiculous procedure. I've found, since I've been here, that the Spanish system is notoriously slow, but the particular prison that is handling this case is even more slow. And so now we're coming up on August, which is when a month where they go on vacation. So there's nothing happening. And mind you, the month of July, they're not really doing anything because it's leading up to their month vacation. So, they're just sticking around, kind of wasting time for what? It makes no sense. And then even with the autopsy report, from what my attorney said, the only thing we got was the toxicology report, and nothing else, nothing that says the cause of death. Um, and their reasoning was that we didn't need it. Well, how were we supposed to know what happened to him? How are we supposed to trust what you're saying happened to him? And so that for me is why I can't trust what it is that they're telling me, and why I felt the need to have to put out the petition, which we've actually were able to get the death certificate finally, and I think the petition had a little bit to do with that, just the pressure and the international coverage on the story here that I was able to generate from the petition and the anniversary of his death. So that is definitely helpful. Things are seemingly moving forward. So yeah.
Okay, so with that person that you mentioned earlier, who was not in the general population, I've written a book about that case. We're not supposed to talk about it on this channel, but just to I'll say it in kind of a safe way. That person, the family demanded an autopsy, and the autopsy showed a fracture of the hyoid, which was more along the lines of homicide rather than suicide. Now, if you're not even allowed access to the body, to have an independent autopsy, how can you ever get to the bottom of things? Who has done the autopsy so far, and who are they working for?
So the I guess it's the local government institution that normally handles these things. They are the ones that have conducted the independent or not the independent, but the autopsy so far. They're the ones who've conducted it. So the prison, wherever the prison takes, their deceased prisoners, that's where he was transported to, and that's who conducted the autopsy.
And is it possible to have an independent uh, medical person do something else, or is that now is it gone? Is there too much time passed, or what's the status of that?
That's what we're trying to work on. That's what we've been trying to work on. But with their investigation still open, um, it's I don't know how that's going to work. Obviously because it's been so much time, where there will be difficulty collecting any accurate information. I would assume just that's probably just how things work. Um, but because I don't have the autopsy report, I'm kind of made the decision with my attorney once he explained to me what was happening, that maybe we should just try to get the autopsy, what they have produced, because according to their Spanish law, this is something that they're supposed to share. It's not supposed to be something that's withheld. And so, if we can't, in lieu of not having that information, that's why I thought it was necessary to do the independent autopsy, because they don't need to have his body any longer. And so I think maybe they're just trying to find a way to block that, to block an independent autopsy. And I think from what my attorney has explained to me, it's up to their courts here to make that decision, which is also very strange. Um, if the family wants to do an independent autopsy, I don't see why that would be a problem, especially if they're going to bear the cost of it. So yeah, I don't know.
What about U.S. law? What country was John a citizen of?
Both the UK and America, they had dual
So,
citizenship.
so how can Spain hold on to him for that long legally if he's a U.S. citizen?
Yes, this is something that I've been speaking to the attorney about. There's really been no explanation other than that this is not normal. What they're doing is not the normal procedure. And so, um, the only thing the attorney feels that he can do is to try to maneuver within the bounds of the law, and try to make something happen that way. I guess that's the only thing that we can do, really. and continue to point out the fact that what they're doing is not their normal procedure, and me just trying to share this information with the world and kind of just shed some light, and maybe they will, I don't know, just to pressure them into doing, the right thing, which would be to just release him, just release his remains, and let us move forward from here.
For God's sake, if they got nothing to hide, you would release him. This is, so suspicious. So, what
Yeah.
motivated you to do the petition?
Honestly, I was just tired. I'm really emotionally spent. I don't, and I was just tired of being quiet and not saying anything and just trying to let the attorney work his angles in the background. And it just kept nagging at me that, John would have, he would have come out and said something. He would have been someone that would have went to the press, and tried to get attention on the situation or made noise in some way. Um, but I just wasn't strong enough at the time. And with the anniversary coming up, I just felt that the world needed to know what was happening here and that he still hadn't been laid to rest. And so that was the motivation for the petition.
And John's lawyer then, what was his perspective on this whole situation?
In what way? What do you mean?
So, like, with the lawyer for the guy who, they said he'd done something similar in America, who was not in the general population, that lawyer, described the certain last meetings he had with that person and his mindset. Did the lawyer confirm that John was in good spirits and he felt like he had a fighting chance of getting out, that kind of thing?
Um, I honestly, I don't remember. I don't recall speaking to him the after John went to court. Mind you, this was during the height of COVID quarantining. And so I'm not sure if he was able to get a chance to meet with John face to face after that. Um, and then, like I said, we found out about him being found in his cell that same day, so we didn't have an opportunity to um, discuss discuss that. But I think, to me, the overall impression of John was that obviously the situation was wearing on him physically. It was taxing on him, obviously, but he was very much, he still had the fight in him. He was very much encouraged by the additional Spanish attorney that we had hired because he had a more focused expertise in extradition, I should say. And so, even with extradition for people to America, so he was very experienced with that. And once he came on board, John was really, I guess I could say, reinvigorated with this fight, and he felt that he actually might have um, a real opportunity to have things kind of go favorably for him, in whatever way that meant, or whatever way that turned out to be.
So people in the chat are curious then about John's relationship with the U.S. government, in particular the CIA, the tax authorities. Could you expand on that, please?
Um, what I know about his um, relationship, I guess I'd call it that, with the CIA is that he did business with them when he initially started his McAfee antivirus, or when it became big, I guess. And to my knowledge, that's the extent of that relationship. I can't speak any further to that. And regarding the tax situation, I just honestly feel like the taxes were not as serious as they were made out to be. Um, they claimed that there was fraud, but he hadn't filed in 8 years, over 8 years. So from the time that he came back from Central America and came back to live full time in America, he hadn't filed taxes. He made no secret about it. He he wrote letters to the IRS and yearly, and informing them that he would not be filing his taxes, and gave the reason why, that he felt they were unconstitutional. So um, it wasn't a secret. It wasn't a secret to the IRS that he wasn't paying his taxes and that he didn't want to pay his taxes. Even in his 2016 campaigning, that was something that he campaigned on. That he believed that income taxes were unconstitutional according to the U.S. Constitution. And so, they had all those years. Obviously you can say that, there's free speech and you can feel free to do that, but obviously there would be consequences, but there were never any. They never tried to seize any of his property, any of his bank accounts, um, nothing like that. They never sent a letter. No one came to the door or came to any of his numerous conferences that he, would speak at. So the timing of it was just very curious as to why they decided at that juncture that it was time to do something about it, even though for years he had been speaking very publicly about his disdain for the IRS. And so when he got arrested, from what I understand, they didn't. What John told me, I should say it that way. He told me that they were detaining him because his passport had been flagged stolen, not because he had an international warrant. He didn't say that that is why he was detained. He said it was because they said his passport had been flagged as stolen. And then the next day was when this international warrant was, it just, materialized. And now he's wanted for, this tax evasion. And so I believe that the additional charges that came from the SEC were just to ensure that he could not escape their grasp on the situation. They had the taxes situation, but it really wasn't that serious of crimes. At the most, he probably would have gotten just a fine and a slap on the wrist. And so I think the additional charges were added on just to ensure that they could um, have him extradited back to America.
So Verity has asked whether you were asked to identify John's body. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories online saying no, the fact that his body's not been released means that he's been secreted off somewhere and he's still alive. But were you asked to see the body?
Yes, I was able to do that, and so I honestly I can understand why people would want him to still be alive because he's faked medical situations. That would be so on par for John. Um, but because of the things that I know, and just because certain things haven't happened in this year um, since his death, I just don't believe that he is alive. Um, and there's no one that wants that to be true more than me. Um, I would love for him to be somewhere, living his best life on a beach with some big booty native girl, feeding him grapes. But I just don't believe that that's the case.
All right, so we've got just under 10 minutes left. So if you're watching this, viewers, and you've got any questions for Janice, please put them in the chat. And quite often, when there's a situation like this, you have to ask yourself, who would benefit from his death? Is that something that you've ever given any thought to?
Very much so. So John and I, we had a lot of, um, we had many instances throughout our relationship where there was danger, threats to his life, kind of nonstop throughout our relationship. And so I believe that these things stemmed from whatever information he was able to collect from Belize. At least that's what I was led to understand. Um, so, what exactly was the extent of that information? I don't know. He's spoken about it on numerous occasions. Mind you, he was John McAfee, the antivirus person, the antivirus guy. And you in order to create the top quality antivirus, you obviously have to know how to break into people's, electronic data, and so that was something that he was very skilled at. And so I don't imagine that he would have lied about that. Um, so whatever information he was able to collect, I believe put him in great, probably in harm's way a lot. and people felt threatened because he was kind of a loose cannon. Obviously, he said what he felt. He said what was on his mind. He wasn't afraid to kind of buck at the system and buck at these three-letter agencies in our government that have clear and rampant corruption within them. Maybe not the organizations as a whole, but definitely rogue individuals within the organizations that are exercising their power for malicious intent. And so he was he was not, I guess, making enemies was something he was very gifted at doing. And so he understood that, and he still felt that he needed to speak the, I guess, I don't want to, this saying is so cheesy now, but speak truth to power. But that's what he wanted to do, and kind of wake people up to what is happening behind the scenes, because people are so used to the corruption, right? And they feel like there's nothing that I can do. But I guess the first thing you could do is to do whatever you have been doing differently, right? Like if you've been historically voting Democratic or Republican, people say voting doesn't work, but I bet if there was, John would always say this, if we elected a homeless person, it wouldn't be much worse than what we've got now, and it sounds ridiculous, but I mean, could you imagine the shakeup within DC if we just stopped voting for these career politicians, right? And we just collectively voted for some random person, and what could they do? And I think that was what the popularity of Trump was, because people were just tired of this, you know, um, this corruption, and they wanted someone different. Was he the right guy? I don't know, but he was just different than what we had, and I think that's what his popularity remains to be.
The question that has come in is: have you read Mark Eglinton's book on John?
Yes, I have actually, and it's really good. And I would humbly suggest that you all, if you haven't read it, please read it. And it's a really good book. It's a really good way to get to know John in a different way than you could ever get to know him by what information is out there about him now. He, when John signed on to work with Mark, they were actually going to be working on an autobiography, and so John really poured his heart out and really spoke to him and shared, intimately about his life. And so I believe that Mark's book really reflects that, in a very positive way. And like I said, you just get to see a different side of John, separate from the crazy, outlandish public figure persona that he's so carefully crafted. And it's just a different version, a different light of him. And I think people will understand a lot better why he felt his life was in danger, and why he may have made enemies within, I guess, in this elite sort of club of people who kind of are behind the scenes running things. And I think it just sheds light on that.
So we're just a few minutes left with
Yeah.
Janice, and the question that's coming from Kitsy. John said he was going to release information about important matters in the event of his death. Did he manage to get the information to a reliable source? Do you know anything about that?
Um, so John would have never shared that information with me, obviously, because that would put me in danger. So I would imagine John was very smart, and he always planned, 10, 20 steps ahead. So I don't think that it'll be something that we see like, hey, the information's over here. Like there will be like this big announcement of it. I think we will just see the effects of it, of the releasing of the information. Maybe there will be arrests behind the scene, or something. I don't know, but that's just my personal feeling. And who he would have gotten it to or where it is, that's anybody's guess. I'm sure he would have figured out a way to ensure that no matter what happened, it would get released.
TLR has asked, it feels like John was a man who knew too much. Do you think this was the case?
Very much so, very much so. And he was no longer controllable, or I don't think he was ever controllable, but I think people were um, were afraid because he was becoming more and more outspoken, especially with his presidential runs. And so I think maybe they weren't it wasn't they felt it wasn't worth the risk of hoping that he would continue to keep secrets and not share certain information.
All right, we've run out of time, Janice. We salute your bravery, and
Okay.
everyone in the chat has just been, totally behind you. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers? And we will put the link to the petition. It's going to be below this video if people want to go over there.
Just thank you, Sean, for having me and allowing me to share this information. And to everyone that has signed and shared the petition, thank you so much. It may not seem like it's doing much, but it is definitely helping over here in Spain, and I appreciate you. If you haven't signed it, please sign and share it with friends and family. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Janice. Thank you, Eric Hunley, for that final message as well. I think that the legend of John made him a target in many ways. All right, you take care, Janice, and we'll get as many people over to that petition as possible. Thanks
Thank
again.
you so much,
Cheers.
Sean. Thank you.
All
Bye.
right, bye-bye. Bye.